Welcome to the new autumn season of the Salon of Classical Architecture. I hope that all of you have had a really good summer, and all of you who are arriving or listening us to the recording, welcome, and thank you very much for being here once more time. I guess that if you are here, it's because you enjoyed our past season from January to June, and you're ready for this one. I think that one of the announcements that I want to mention in this one is that as I am part of the traditional architectural group in UK, which is also INBAU England, they are morally sponsoring us as well as part of our sponsor, together with the Classic Planning Academy and Escuela de Arquitectura Clásica. So I want to welcome and thank the traditional architectural group for doing so. I wanted to, before I started, this is the program that we're going to do today. We're going to present the contents of the new season. Then we're going to have our usual lecture, which in this case, to open the season, is going to be Traditional Architectural Education in Spain from 1742 to 1956. And then our usual question time, project critique, and open debate of whatever topic you on classical architecture you want to discuss. So as I was saying, a big thank you to the Traditional Architectural Group for sponsoring us. The Traditional Architectural Group is based in UK, and it was founded with the aim of promoting and defending traditional and classical architecture in Britain, and by extension everywhere else. And it's linked to the RABA, the Royal Institute of British Architects, and is host of INBAU National Chapter in UK. We will talk about INBAU at the end because there is a new World Congress at the end of October. If you didn't know about it, ask us for more information, and it will be great to see you in this Congress in London at the end of October. So regarding the contents, and we will discuss at the end of the lecture about the contents. I am structuring it as a short season, only 8 classes as opposed to last one where we had last one we had 12, so it's just 4 less than last class. And basically the topics were last season was more structured in terms of all the resources to learn about classical architecture. This one is a bit more miscellaneous, also wanting to give a response to all the people who very kindly answer back to the anonymous poll and questionnaire about the salon, in which you were asking for different contents, for a bit of a variety of contents, and also to talk about books. And also following a discussion with other people, one thing that I realized that it could be good to talk about education, which is the opening topic today, and also what I'm calling precursors of modern tradition. And it's all these architects, so from the early 20th century up to the 1970s, once postmodernism started taking over, that continued doing classical architecture and traditional architecture. It's also to challenge and to break a bit the modernist narrative, in which modernism appeared in the 20s and wipes out everything. And that's not totally true. The same way that there was a Gothic survival, there is a classical or traditional survival across the 20th century up until our days. It couldn't be otherwise. If it was not for those precursors of modern tradition, we wouldn't be here. If it wasn't for people like Raymond Erith in UK or Luis Moya in Spain, just to mention a couple of them, we wouldn't be here. So this is something to honor and to bear in mind. And on that sense, we are having 4 lectures on that. The first one will be on the 27th of September, which will be the last generation of classicists. And within them, we will talk about Regional Blomfield, Lutyens, and architects like Aníbal González and many others all across the world. Then on the 11th of October, we are going to have a special to commemorate the discovery of America, to commemorate with all our American friends, Ibero-American friends. It will be a session in Spanish and in Portuguese, with some resumes in English. And we're going to celebrate what makes us special, what unites. We're going to celebrate what divides us, anything that it's about the Ibero-American world That's what they wanted to celebrate. We're going to have people from Mexico confirmed. I want to bring people from Brazil, from Spain. It's going to be a small event with some small lectures and some debate. And I hope that all of you will come. And there will be summaries in English at the end of each lecture, but being an Ibero-American event, it will be in Spanish and in Portuguese for those Portuguese and Brazilian participating. Then we're going to dedicate one lecture on the 25th of October to a book that has been widely forgotten, and it's called Modernismus by Reginald Blomfield. This book is probably one of the first attacks against modernism in history. It's from 1933, quite early attack on modernism by an architect who was probably the last great classical architect in Britain. I know that in UK we have Lutyens, which is almost like a god, but probably Reginald Blomfield is an architect that has been very unfairly forgotten, mostly because of his fierce critique against modernism. And it should be good to remember this text, published at the same time that the Chart of Athens, of Urbanism, and many other manifestos of modernism as a way of understanding why we are here and why the traditional movement is not something to look to the past, but something to look to the future. And that's important in these uncertain moments, to be able to look to the future and not to the past. Then we will have another session about the precursors of modern tradition, in this case, living with the modernist. We will talk about those who are developing their careers, or the beginning of their careers, in the interwar period, when modernism was just one option more. Then we will have a special guest, Alexander Kiss, who is a Brazilian-Hungarian architect residing in UK, and is quite an interesting person, a good friend of mine as well, who will be talking about the symbolic power of architecture and its relationship with theology, which I think is also very important, especially from a Catholic perspective, to understand traditional architecture from a Catholic perspective, from the perspective of countries which have been traditionally Catholic. It's important to understand where we come from, not just the aesthetics and the imagery. Then the two last ones will be another session on precursors of modern tradition, surviving the modernist in this case. So it was those architects who were classical, still in the years, in those iron years in which everything was supposed to be super modern, and we are told that everything was super modern. There were some irreductibles who kept doing classical architecture despite the triumphant modernism. And the last one, before we end the season, will be about restoration. Most of you come from different WhatsApp groups, or that you might be listening us for the first time in the video. And you know that there is always a big debate about restoration, what can be done, what cannot be done, if rust can be ledik. But all those are debates that are from academia, and they differ a lot with what actually has been done in restoration, where from a modernist perspective or from a traditional perspective. So we will talk about those traditional architects, about those architects who approach the restoration of heritage from a perspective that is not the one that is told in the modernist narrative, and actually is the narrative that is told in our heritage regulations. And that's important to understand, and that we will make the point across all this season, that the problem with restoration is not a problem of legislation, it's a problem of interpretation. We will have more of that across the course. And then, as a teaser for what's going on from January to June 2026, we will have another long season theme focus, in this case, in Hispano-Islamic architecture. I think it's a very interesting architecture that it has its roots in antiquity. Some people, Rafael Manzano among others, have defined it as the last architecture of late antiquity, rather than medieval architecture. Is late antiquity architecture, and it thrived the same way that you can consider Byzantine architecture as late antiquity up until the iconoclast Kerel. You can consider all the early Islamic architecture as late antiquity, and that helps you to understand the roots and how things are the way they are. And then we are going to move forward and see how that has an impact in Spanish architecture historically during the Middle Ages, and how that affects the revivals, and how even the power of Hispano-Islamic architecture is so strong that even in Arab countries, they don't look at their own architecture, they look at the architecture of the Islamic Spain. So we will get onto that. That's the teaser for the next season, and I'm sure that you will love it. But as always, this is 4 months ahead. I am always open to change the program and to include what you want me to include, because this, at the end of the day, this is done to give you resources and tips and ways of understanding classical and traditional architecture and enjoy it at the same time. So, as I said, we are going to be talking today about traditional architectural education in Spain between 1752 and 1955. Why these two dates? The reason between these two dates is because 1752 is the year of the founding of the Royal Academy of Fine Arts in Spain, and 1955 is the last traditional program on architecture heavily rooted in traditional architecture in Spain, and at the same time, the moment it's in between the last of the traditional programs and the first of the modernist programs, and also it's an inflection point on how the dictatorship was approaching traditional architecture and architecture in general. So that's why we stop at 1955. Now, what happened before 1752? What people didn't. I was the other day in a WhatsApp group, we were having a discussion in which they were saying that the Dosar method had a focus on the plan, and that person was asking what happened. Didn't do plans before the Dosar methods? So the question would be here: what happened before 1752 in Spain? They didn't learn. They were only literate architects. No, they were literate architects. They were very literate architects, but we have very little information about how they learned, how they were educated. We have information about what they wrote. We have information about what they knew, but we don't have information about how they knew it. And probably the only text that we have similar to a learning manual is this book by this Alarife, which is more like a builder, like a craftsman, rather than an architect, but still an architect at the same time, Diego López de Arenas, who wrote that treatise on white carpentry. We will talk about that from January onwards. And there he explains in a very empirical way how to do mudéjar coffer ceilings. So that's the the sort of architectural education that we had back then. It was an architectural education that was on the guildhall, on the master, on the apprentice learning from the master, or individual people learning almost by themselves. It was a non-structured education. In 1752, this changes. The Bourbons, who were the dynasty reigning in Spain from 1700, take inspiration from the model of the French Academy, and they decide to implement royal academies in Spain, starting with the Royal Academy of the Language. And by 1752, they decide to actually implement an academy. I'm going to, as I can hear, I'm going to mute all of you, but you can unmute yourself whenever you want. So, and one of the I'm bringing this image here as an allegory of the foundation of the Real Academia, because I have said that before. If you're new, you're listening for the first time, allegories are very important in Western culture because they are an image. An allegory is a representation of an idea or a concept or an action through images. And in this case, we have several things in here. We have basically the whole idea of this is with the help of the king, or with the blessing of the king, with the fame, carrying the trumpet of taking fame to the king for having approved the academy, and the patronage of the noblemen who founded it. Mercury is bringing the three arts to Spain. So, and at the same time, he's stepping over this guy with the donkey ears, which is Marcias, as a representation of the ignorance. He's bringing the three arts to Spain. So it's a very conceptual, very important movement. I mean, now that we are in a time of concepts, the allegories were back in the past very, very useful elements to transmit an idea. And it is very clear what they want to transmit here. The King Ferdinand VI is bringing the arts back to Spain. This is the building, the current building of the Royal Academy. It's very central to Madrid. Those who have been in Madrid, I'm sure you have passed through this door plenty of times. And initially, this is where students went to study architecture. It was a palace that was then converted into the academy. It was originally Baroque, and then it was turned back into this beautiful neoclassical facade and successively refurbished to host the collections. In 1844, because we're still talking about the chronology, the studies of architecture segregate from the academy and they become special studies of architecture. It is important to consider this because they get segregated from the so-called fine arts. They get a special status within the academy. And they do this as a way of separating um, and marking a difference from the engineerings, which have been evolving on their own way. This plan of studies, I'm bringing the two, because it will be too long to analyze all the plans of studies. I'm bringing the two first and the three last plans of studies. In 1844, if you wanted to study architecture, you had to do a preparatory exam on several topics and then 5 years of architecture. The preparatory exam had arithmetic, algebra, geometry, trigonometry, and practical applications of that, plus physics and chemistry, and some additional geometry, which is called here conical section, which is basically how you draw a section through a cone. Nowadays, most of you will say, oh yeah, you just cut it through a SketchUp. But back then, you had to completely draw, and there is a method to do it. For those of you who don't learn English, the whole first year was dedicated to calculus, a lot of differential calculus, integral calculus, application of mathematics onto architecture, descriptive geometry, and principles of draftsmanship. So you didn't learn design, you just were training yourself for the next stages. Second year, it was mostly the same. More mechanics applied to construction and to machinery, still since they were in 1844, so the primitive steam machineries back then, the architects in Spain were already studying them, and then how to apply geometry to shadows, perspective, and more important, stereotomy. So we are not talking here about, as many people think, that the study of architecture in the old times was just about doing pretty drawings. In Spain, as you can see, they were being prepared, as they are still today, prepared as good engineers. And then finally, in the second year, you could have drafting of the orders of architecture and then copying of details of old and new buildings. Just drafting and copying details, not creation. Third year, for the first time, they were studying history. So think that they were still getting ready. Now they were ready through history. Then theory of construction and materials. And then architectural drafting, which is, again, copying of ancient and new buildings. New buildings mean buildings from Renaissance, including also sometimes Middle Ages, and copy of ancient buildings was buildings from antiquity. Then on the fourth year, you were having civil architecture and hydraulics, which we could call nowadays like engineering and plumbing. Then general theory of art and decoration, practice of construction, which is more how to site management, as you could say, copying old and new buildings. And now it's just not only you copying, you analyze them. You're not creating, you're not designing, you're still in the fourth year, and you are not analyzing. And you're still analyzing building. And then in the fifth year, after having been learning for 4 years principle of architecture, is when you are ready to compose a building, to design a building, to know arquitectura legal, which is legal architecture, is again practice management and laws, what in UK is a lot of what you learn in part 3. And then finally, práctica del arte, which is again how you to settle your own practice. So it's quite a complete program for 1844, and especially from that perspective, or from that idea that tells you that these people were just doing pretty drawings, which is what many times you think when you read about what American sources thought about the Beaux-Arts, which is not the actual truth. The Beaux-Arts had a similar system because Spain was actually copying all this from France. Not in fairness, not actually from the École des Beaux-Arts, but from the École Polytechnique. That's where we were copying. That's what the architectural model in Spain was inspired. And also in the École des Beaux-Arts, once you were taking out the pretty drawings and the atelier, you were learning the same as in the École Polytechnique. And in the École Polytechnique, you were also learning the orders and composition. So it was not such a separated artistic world. There was a lot of engineering then we have missed for a series of reasons. And we will talk about some of them later on. Finally, in 1857, due to some problems, logistics, administrative, bureaucratic problems, it is decided that the School of Architecture is going to be fully segregated from the academy and is going to have its own rules, its own regulations, its own body, its own space. It's not going to be anymore in the palace that we saw. In 1857, the program changes quite drastically. We have 3 years of preparatory course, plus plus 2 access exams, and then 3 years of architecture. So the preparatory course will be with the science, so you will be learning with engineers as well, pretty much like the École Polytechnique, algebra, geometry and trigonometry, analytic geometry in 2 and 3 dimensions, differential calculus, mechanics, descriptive geometry, geodesy, experimental physics, and then zoology, botanics, and mineralogy with geology. So you are having quite a scientific approach to architecture. Think 1857. If you grab any modernist manifesto against traditional architecture, they will tell you that these people knew nothing and that they need to learn new things. It was not true. Then you would have an access exam in which you have to be examined on 2 things. One is to demonstrate what you have been learning in the 3 preparatory courses, and then a drafting exam that you have to learn on your own. You have to learn drafting on your own. All the orders, everything you have to be learning on your own in private academies or by yourself or in workshops, ateliers, etc. You may have heard the word atelier, which was quite popular in France, but we don't have ateliers in Spain because the nature of the atelier in the École des Beaux-Arts was almost like a students' organization, almost spontaneous. I don't know if today we have someone from Norway. We don't have anyone. We don't have any of our Norwegians usuals, but in any case, the students from Trondheim nowadays are reviving the concept of the atelier, and they have created a student association called Acanthus, where they meet to design classical architecture. That's basically what they did in the ateliers. So this doesn't happen in Spain because the students don't have the money to do that. And then once you have passed the exam, you would again be scientific construction, scientific theoretical of construction, practical construction, aesthetic and theory, legal architecture, hygiene, optics and acoustics, and then composition, invention, decoration, and distribution, namely design. So in this case, after 3 years, in your 4th year studying architecture, you would be able to design. So you would have been 3 years doing scientific studies, and from the 3rd year onwards, you would be straight away with composition, because in your washing exam, you would have demonstrated your knowledge of the orders. This is the building in Madrid, which is called Imperial College. Was a Jesuit convent and building that was expropriated to the Jesuits when they were evicted, and then expropriated again with the desamortización, the confiscation of monasteries and properties of the church, and converted into the School of Architecture. This was the first School of Architecture, and still nowadays you have our coat of arms of the architects, which I am wearing here as well, which is what represents us as Spanish architects. And this is a beautiful symbol, and I always like talking about it because it has a laurel branch of leaves to represent the triumph for having finished your career. Has a oak branch to represent the sturdiness of our building, of the buildings we're going to design. It has a flower to represent the beauty of the buildings that we're going to design, and then a compass to represent the precision which we're going to design the buildings. And then some of them, most of them nowadays, they have a crown, which means we are in a monarchy and we are crowned as well. Doesn't mean only that it's under the patronage of the monarchy, but also we are crowned ourselves as architects. During the Spanish Republic, there was still a crown, but was a mural crown, so representing that the coronation wasn't to the ruler, was to yourself. So it's a beautiful symbolism, and as I said, it is important to understand symbolism. These are not just pretty things. These are things with a symbol. These are things with a meaning. These are things that are transmitting you a message, and it's important that you understand the message that they are transmitting because you will feel more connected to them. The School of Architecture stayed in that building up until the 1930s, and unfortunately, in 1936, it was moved to where it is now in the Ciudad Universitaria in Madrid. I don't know if today we have people studying in Madrid in the Polytechnica, but this is your School of Architecture for all the people from Madrid. That is where I did my master as well, with that beautiful ionic portico and this very sleek, almost Art Deco facade. But unfortunately, it was inaugurated just before the Civil War, and the building was heavily damaged after the war. So the studies were paralyzed during the war, and by the time the war finished in 1939, the building is in such a bad condition that needs to be almost rebuilt. I mean, all the stone cladding that you see there was added in the 1940s because the whole facade was destroyed by bombs and shootings. Unfortunately, fortunately and unfortunately, this happened halfway when the moving was done. What happened? That all the previous students' drawings, all the drafting archives arrived there first, and they stayed there during the whole war. And this was a hot point in the war. This was not just far from the front. This was the front. And during the harsh winters, unfortunately, the soldiers used all the papers, all the drawings as fuel to heat themselves. You cannot blame them for that. But fortunately, all the books from the library remained in the old building, and most of the models remained in the old buildings. So the only thing we lost was the otherwise big bulk of drawings from 1857 up to 1936. Very few have survived, and those which have survived is because they were from students who took them or who recovered them once they graduated as architects. Coming back to 19th century, in 1875, due to the growth of the country, and especially the growth of Catalonia, a new school of architecture needs to be opened. And in 1975, the Escuela Técnica Superior de Arquitectura is opened in Barcelona. This is the second school of architecture that we have in Spain. This was the original building, quite in the example. And unfortunately, in the 60s, they came here. They were not as lucky as University of Madrid, and they came to a modernist building. And just to put an end to explain why we are ending here, in 1955, 1955, on top of having that program, has a symbolic date for that. 1955 is the year in which the Laboral University of Gijón, and if you don't know and you want to know more about the Universidad Laboral, please send me right in the chat here, or write us through the WhatsApp group. Write me to the WhatsApp group, write the off-topic session, and say that you want to know more, and then I can prepare a lecture about it. It's very interesting building done by an architect called Luis Moya. Lots of inspiration, lots of references, very, very clever reference of classicism. Is the last classical building in the old tradition in Spain. Those of you who can catch the reference, this gate that you see here on the upper right corner is directly inspired in the gate to the market of Miletus. So we are not talking here about an architect who knew nothing and was just putting columns on top of the other. We're talking about an architect who knew very, very well his sources. Anyway, in 1855, when the building is finished, Luis Moya takes all his colleagues of the academy to the Universidad Laboral. They visit it, they make questions, and then they meet all of them back to do a critical session. Critical sessions were common amongst all of them, but what makes this one relevant is that everyone, all his colleagues, were particularly harsh on him and his classicism. Luis Moya complains, if you read all these pages in Spanish, he complains about that. He said that why are you having a go at me when you are all doing the same buildings that I do? It was not. And when you read the building, they were very well arguments that anyone should make about a building. And this is something that I have been saying, that not because it has columns, we need to accept it as beautiful. But in this case, the critic went beyond. Oh, this column doesn't work, this is the wrong order, this is the wrong proportion. No, they were questioning why has he used classical language. And it's a bit of an end because you can clearly see that after that critical session, all the topics dealt in the academic change, start becoming more modernist, and all the architects also, they depart from the classical tradition that has been there in Spain up until then. We have to say, of course, that it was heavily promoted by the dictatorship, but it was good quality architecture anyway. And which are the reasons why that happened, especially in 1955? Well, the regimes, especially of Spain and Portugal, who were under two dictatorship, they had to find a way of preserving themselves after the Second World War, and the Americans were very happy to keep them a sort of deterrence of communism, but Portugal and Spain wanted the money, they wanted the military bases, and at the same time, in the United States, back by the early mid 50s, it was had completely embraced modernism, and as part of the legacy that comes with the Americans, not only money, and modernism came to Spain and Portugal. I always say that the Plan Marshall brought modernism back to Europe. I mean, all the modernist architects emigrated to the United States. They imposed modernism in the United States, which is what they couldn't do in Europe, and then the Americans struck back with bringing their own modernism. And that's when 1955, which is in between the signature of the agreements between Spain and the United States and the visit of Eisenhower to Spain, is a bit of an inflection point on that. After that date, in 1956, the School of Architecture of Sevilla is founded, and this facade that you see here, the back of the building is from the 18th century, but this facade is from the 1950s. So again, these in a moment in which everyone is telling you, oh, no, everyone was modernist, see what Spain was doing still in 1956. So this is for you to bear in mind that the tradition didn't disappear from one day to another, that in most of the cases was and is still alive, it's just silenced. So it's important to know that, especially when you see this building with despair. Oh, we cannot do this anymore. No, yes, we can. There are people there who can do this. You just need to find them. And obviously, your professor at the schools aren't going to tell you that. I mean, I know that we have professors of architecture here, which I love, and I collaborate a lot with them, and they are references in their field, but they know that they are not talking about them. So, and if you are a professor of traditional architecture hearing us from the YouTube channel, please know that this is not about you. This is about modernist schools. Unfortunately, this is what the School of Architecture is nowadays. This is where I learned architecture, so you can imagine that the place is not the most creative space to learn. I remember I had a professor here in this school that used to say that he could feel the pain and the frustration and the bad vibes in the walls of the building. So how was with this? I finished the chronology of it, and I don't know if any of you has a question, want to make any question or comment about the chronology that we have been discussing. If not, we can leave it for the end. You can unmute and say something if you want. Okay, we'll continue. So I was studying architecture at the Real Academia. One of the things that happened when once the academy was founded is the publicity that the academy did about itself. Again, there will be more and more allegories. This is a very beautiful allegory done by a French architect, but for the Spanish Academy. And it was like a sort of a greeting card. No? You were supposed to write something here in the blank space, but it's a very beautiful image. And again, we have all the elements that we need to see that these are telling us about a new era, represented with this female with giving a breast to a baby, the putti carrying on the symbols of the architect, and then at the bottom more putti drafting the orders. So this is telling you a message, and then some construction tools around. This is telling you the message that this is what you are learning. This is the new learning that the academy is bringing. This other one is even more um, graphic and more obvious and more direct. Here is the academy bringing light to the world, basically. So we have architecture just bringing light to geometry, to learning history, and to authorities that these are supposed to be Vitruvius and Alberti. So it is also very important how the academy is bringing light to a dark world. And if you want to know more about how was learning architecture in the academy and what did they draw, what did they design, you can go to the website of our Spanish Royal Academy, and you have approximately 2,850 drawings done by students of architecture of the academy. So it's quite a lot. And you can see the different type of exams that they have. These ones that you have here were exercises for exams. So they were the students, usually those exams were quite harsh. I mean, I don't know if you have ever read about the exams to become a bureaucrat in Imperial China, in which they had to be 3 days isolated. This was something like that. The student was like a day or two isolated, drafting, and they could leave, but they couldn't leave. They had to leave everything in the room, etc. And then they would be registered before and after. If you were bringing any sketch or something, you would be penalized. So they were quite strict exams, and they were producing this in a record time. I'm bringing just some examples. For example, this was a first prize by an architect called Virgilio Berda, and he designed a new building for the academy. These were like as projects being as fancy and as ideological as any project that any student could do, or any of the architects that were here. We did at our schools of architecture. This is a new academy. I brought specifically this one because it reminds a little bit to the palace of Charles V in the Alhambra, and see about how he was thinking very well about creating an axis so that you were going down the stairs, you could see this niche, and how the wonderful structure that he's designing. So it's a lot of thought put in this plan. Again, this is not just a pretty drawing, and we need to go beyond that. We need to go beyond this is just a pretty drawing. This drawing is telling me a lot of things. Or this other one, which was a project for beautification of the facade of the Royal Academy. This was for a procession, for a festival held in the honor of the kings, Charles IV and Queen Maria Louise. And you see that he was this student. We don't know, it was an anonymous drawing, was proposing to put a portico in front of it with sculptures and a very interesting iconographic program. Or this other one was the so-called prueba de pensado, which was an exam that a regular exam, basically. There was another one. I love the title. For those of you who are Spanish, you will understand it. It was called prueba de repente. And repente is like all in a sudden, because they were for those people who were independent, or who were not students of the academy but would like to examine themselves. They could go to the academy and ask for an exam, and then the board will meet and will say, okay, fine, you are being examined tomorrow. So it was like suddenly for people who didn't go to the academy, the academy could examine themselves and give them usually a minor title. They wouldn't become architects, they would only become master builders. But this one was for an architect, and you can see that he was not only adding beautiful plans and elevations, but also construction details. Obviously to a primitive level, but still you can see all the elements of the construction of this truss included in there. Plus several details. So those of you who have seen the analytics, this is the Spanish analytic. And together with the Royal Academy, there would be regional academies. There was one academy in 1678, the second one in Valencia, 1771 Sevilla, 1775 Barcelona, 1778 Cadiz, 1779 Valladolid, 1781 Mexico City by Manuel de Tolsa, which was one of the greatest. He was Spanish, but I would say he was one of the greatest Mexican architects because he brought so much beautiful architecture to the city of Mexico that he should be studied more. And as I always say in a very bold statement, you cannot understand McKee Meta White, the trio of big American architects, without having studied first Manuel de Tolsa. They are almost nothing compared with the beautiful thing that he did. 1786, the Academy in Burgos, 1810 Tenerife, and 1849 Malaga. All of them were using Vignola. And I was discussing with people recently about the importance of Vignola in the history of architecture because we're speaking in English. Most of you come from an Anglo-Saxon world. The Anglo-Saxon world is leading the revival on traditional architecture, but the Anglo-Saxon world has its theory of architecture, his theoretical framework is inspired in Palladium and can be very well documented through Inigo Jones and Giacomo Leoni, or James Leoni, as he ended up being named. While in the continent, the basis is Vignola, Giacomo Baroccio de Vignola, and his Canon of the Five Orders. Why Vignola? Vignola is a treatise that doesn't need a text to be drawn. It has very well done images, very self-explanatory illustrations that then, if you don't know how to read, which was the majority of the practitioners and craftsmen of the time, you can still design. You don't need an architect, or you don't need an architect, you need a person who knows how to read to tell you about that. So it's very important that we acknowledge that Vignola, together with Serlio and Alberti, we have to say as well, is the basis of the continental European architectural tradition and, by extension, the Ibero-American tradition. So those of you who are listening to us from Mexico, from Colombia, from Argentina, from Brazil, your base, your architectural base is Vignola, is Serlio, is not Palladio. No matter how much today we are indirectly influenced by Neo-Palladianism through all the beautiful architecture that is being done in Anglo-Saxon countries. So this is just a side note. And when you need to look for old reference, when you need to learn the orders, because a lot of people come and ask me, oh, Palladio, Palladio. And I say, no. I mean, I remember in the first season, the one that we never recorded, I was speaking with a French architect, and he was telling me, oh, I have used Palladio to inspire my building. And I said, well, you are French. You should use Vignola. There is nothing more French than Vignola. Because that was the treatise that was used. And we will come to Vignola a little bit at the end. So this is how was studied architecture in the Escuela Técnica Superior, in the academy. Let's see about the Escuela de Arquitectura. Here things changed. While the academy was more or less stable, between 1844 and 1956, the School of Architecture of Madrid had 12 plans of studies. 12 plans. Seems a lot. You see that every 10 to 15 years, they were changing the plan of studies. But also think that during the same time, Spain has 2 dynastic changes, 3 civil wars, 2 republics, 2 dictatorships, and 5 constitutions. So it doesn't seem so much in that sense, considering the historical situation of the country, changing governments and forms of government, constitutions, monarchy, civil wars. So we had a very agitated story from in 19th century up to the first half of 20th century. And that is also reflected in the way architecture was taught. But all of them share some similarities that make it easy for us to know what they were studying and how they were structured. Why? Because all plans of studies were published in official documents. And nowadays, you can go to the School of Architecture of Madrid, check the history, and they have links. The website of the school is a modernist school, have links to all these official documents. It's not hidden information, it's open for everyone. What it is important as well is the changes in this government, in the governments, are accommodated in the plans. So the plans accommodate the changes in governments, the evolution of techniques, and also they set a legal framework for architects, engineers, and master builders. That was also one of the changes, the reasons why they were changing a lot. If new technologies were implemented and they were not taught before, they were incorporated. So it was not like a, again, as modernists would say, it was like a strict close-minded system. It was an evolving system. And then in the particular case of Spain, there will always be a legal battle to make the difference between architects and engineers, which is something that in the rest of Europe, it was solved early in the 20th century by the way of removing architects from almost all the liabilities in terms of structure and then giving it to the engineers. Spain kept the liability on technology. And that make a difference. No? Spanish architects will become legally liable on technical matters for buildings, while then the engineers will specialize on machinery and big infrastructures. The curriculum, as I was saying before, is inspired in the École Polytechnique in Paris, which was also teaching architecture, but from an engineering perspective. So we have a bit of a twisted thing. They were not learning from the academy. And one of the reasons why they were not learning from the academy is because they have segregated from the academy. So they didn't want to learn from the École des Beaux-Arts, which was the successor of the French Academy. In most of the cases, access exams or preparatory courses were required, and the students had to learn on their own. So this thing that the student, or thinking that the students would learn the orders, would learn classical architecture at university was not true. They had to learn by themselves. And I know that a lot of you use the American Vignola as a reference, and a lot of you come to us saying that, oh, the American Vignola doesn't tell the whole information. That's because the American Vignola is not a book for beginners. The American Vignola is a book for people who already have a knowledge on how to draw the orders, and it's just a refreshment. Design workshops, proper design workshops, appeared for the first time in 1875. Before, they were still mixed. Even when we have seen some of them called composition, they were still mixed with theory of composition, and eventually you design something to demonstrate the theory, but not as a separate. Design workshop is only 1875. And as a funny thing, as a funny trivia, the models of reference are the Spanish neoclassical tradition, the purely neoclassical 18th century tradition, and then regionalist in the regional architecture. The French Beaux-Arts architecture, that one that is like claimed, especially in the American world, as the best architecture, in Spain it was considered modernist. It was considered that it was not good for the Spanish architect to learn all these vicious things coming from Paris, as they used to say, architects of the time used to say. No, they were complaining that they didn't know how to design a neoclassical portico, but they could do perfectly any of the Paris fashions. And by the time they were saying that, end of 19th century could either be what we call now Art Nouveau, or could be any of the Beaux-Arts tradition. And then, as we were saying before, the social and economic issues prevented the emergence of an atelier system or a program of prices, as you had in France, or a sponsor international stakes. No? I mean, the whole purpose of the atelier was that the more senior architects would present to competitions that then would give them prizes to study abroad, either in Rome or Switzerland or England, or would do a trip around Paris or give them a grant. There was no money in Spain to do that, and therefore the atelier system didn't evolve, didn't come out of there. Students could work for architects or could learn on their own. That's also one of the reasons why classes usually were in the evenings, to acknowledge that most of the students were working in the morning. Even the most wealthy ones would be working and learning at offices of architecture. But instead of that, there were a lot of trips around the country, which was the only thing that the university could afford. And there were a lot, and the students did a lot of surveys and measure drawings that you can still see, and also you can still buy, because the whole purpose of these trips around the country was to learn about regional architecture of Spain, and with the ultimate purpose of creating a massive publication called Monumentos Arquitectónicos de España, which is architectural monuments of Spain. But they started doing it. It was a failure, but around 50% of the plates were actually printed. But because the books were never published, the prints stayed there it was still in the academy, because the school didn't have the money to have their own printing press. And nowadays, which is the important thing, if you're interested in buying very good quality chromolithographies from 19th century, about 200, 300 euros maximum, you can go to the website of the Royal Academy in Spain and buy them. They are original and they are super cheap because they have lots of them. So it can be a good opportunity to get a really, really good quality chromolithography. And just to finalize this part, we are going to see the plan of 1914, the plan of 1932, and the plan of 1955. In 1914, which is considered one of the best plans by most of the people, you had one access exam, which has divided in 3 scientific exams and 3 drawing exams, 2 preparatory years, and then 4 years of proper studying architecture. Again, the first preparatory year would have calculus, geometry, more practice on calculus and geometry, and copy of ornament. So they were starting the drafting earlier. Then the second year, you would have mechanics, history of architecture, clay modeling, which could go both a sculpture but also understanding the brick, because by then and brick was becoming an industrialized material, and people needed to understand how it was modeled, how it was produced, to produce all the wonderful brick ornaments that you see. So again, we are not talking about people doing fancy things and then making the engineers work. They knew what they had to do. So bear that in mind as well. And finally, architectural details. And then the 4 years were on materials, electronics, and machinery. So bear in mind, you're in 1914. You have a student of architecture learning about electronics. That Le Corbusier would come back in the 20s and said that nobody knows about electronics. Not true. The students were learning about electronics, construction, strength of materials, and then copy of architectural composition, more construction, hydraulics, understood as plumbing, basically, or supply and sewage, theory of art, and then projects. Third year was technology, hygiene and salubrity, meaning like sewage, optics and acoustic, topography, composition, and proyectos de conjunto, which would be considered as big composition urban studies. Legal architecture was like law, managing, and liabilities, history of architecture. Think that only on the 4th year you are learning history of architecture. Before, you were just getting ready and doing history rather than learning from it. Then you were learning urbanism, and then another year of projects. In 1932, with the coming of the Second Republic, you have 2 initiation courses plus 1 complementary course, but plus 5 years. In this, the 2 initiation courses were like, as they were before, general introduction of calculus, arithmetic, geometry. Then the complementary course, which was like preparation for the exam, would have calculus, mechanics, geometry, a copy of architectural elements, copy of the orders, and then composition. So you would be evaluating not only for your drafting skills, but also your proper design skills. And then the 5 years, would this become much more similar to how programs are nowadays. You would have perspective and shadows, construction, topography and geography, with some astronomy as well, details and ensembles, history of art, more construction, material, resistance, theory of art, hydraulics, design, more construction. Think that we have 5 years of construction mostly, stability and construction, so a lot of structural calculations, electronics and machinery, theory of composition, and more design workshops. 4th year, more construction, technology in general, sewage, more design. 5th year, legal architecture, economia politica means more the budgeting and dealing with the money and the like cash flow. Urbanology, which means urbanism, history of architecture, and then another year of projects. And then finally, 1956, things are overly simplified, where you have descriptive geometry, perspective, and shadow. So all that is concentrated in 1 year. Rational mechanics and machinery, history of art, construction, and drafting of elements. So this is the remnant of what you had before of drafting the orders, etc. By this time, students maybe or maybe not know the orders, but they will be taught there on the 1st year. Then you had construction, resistance of materials, history of architecture, theory of alter, mean like alterations, projects, stability of construction, more construction, topography, geodesic and astronomy, composition, more projects, construction, technology, hygiene, electronics, acoustics, and more projects. And the fifth year, construction, urbanism, installations in general, which we could call M&E, legal architecture, and more projects. So as you can see, there is a concentration of the materials at the same time that they become more settled, that they become more easy to be taught and to be approached, and also they become regulated, so you don't need to do so much complicated calculation because the regulations are creating standardized elements. And also it's important that, I mean, as you can see, I mean, the elements are retained, but they start to fade. That's why I put the stop also in terms of plans of studies in 1956. And this is a bit things that students would have used, the type of publications that the students would have used when it was saying you have to learn the orders on your own. This was actually an Argentinian booklet. And here, this was, you can see by the illustration, this was for kids. This was what we could say now high school, early high school kids. They would come and learn to draw the orders in manuals like this. It would be taught in plastic arts or whichever drafting subject they have nowadays. This is what they would learn to draw the orders. It was as you can see here. It's a booklet where you can just let you have the orders on one page and the other just to reproduce what you had learned. And these are some of the drawings of the students of the time. Even the scale, you can see this is a very small drawing. You can see that there is a reference to the slab, a line for the build-up. Despite being a very beautiful drawing, there is a technical um, spirit behind it. It's very important that we insist on that we don't stress this enough. All these drawings, they are not only pretty, they're also useful. Doing pretty drawings is very good, but as architects, we need to do pretty drawings that represent the things the way they need to be represented. This is a sketch from 1946, so just after the Civil War, and you can see clearly here that the students was thinking on either he changed his mind or the professor told him to raise the the finials for this entrance to a botanic garden. And this is still 1946. So when the States got fully embraced modernism, this is what it was still being done in Spain. 1956, this is one of the drawings that they were doing in those subjects of copying architectural elements. So this is very interesting what they were. Students back then, 1956, no, when they were telling you Alvar Aalto, Mies van der Rohe, this is what the students in Spain were still doing. Some people would say, "Oh, how retrograde, how?" But this is what they call the survival of the tradition. And this is the status in which still many professors, all professors of nowadays, they learn that way and they know the orders very well. So that's why when you are into debate, some people start like um, dismissing and belittling the modernists. I say, don't belittle the modernists because they know what they are doing. They know very well what they're doing because they learned in this system. Now we haven't learned in this system, but they did. So they know classical architecture very well, and they know and they learn how to hate it. So it's very important to know when and how debate and modernists, but never just disregard them because they know a lot. Now they have power in academics, but in the day-to-day life, you can design whatever you want. Another drawing from 1956. This is the looking from below to part of the cymatium of a Corinthian order with the beautiful corbels and the florets. And as a complement of what I was saying, we have a lot of books where we know what exactly they were learning. For example, this book from 1846, Exposition of the System Adopted for the Teaching of Theory of Art, of Architectural Art. So this person, Aníbal Álvarez, this is his classes. This other one from Juan Miguel de Inclán Valdés, Lesson on Civil Architecture. So this book contains a summary of all his lessons, the same way that you have the lesson of Durand, that now translated into English. So we know what they were teaching, we know what they were learning. So it's not a lost art. And it's important that we know that all these materials are available for us. Later on, in the case of Spain, we had the Revista de la Sociedad Central de Arquitectos, which published a lot, especially for Barcelona. it became you know a lot how things were taught in Barcelona through this magazine. You can also see a lot of the students drawing because the best student drawings would be published in this magazine. And this is a very interesting book from the 1920s by Teodoro de Anasagasti, Enseñanza de la Arquitectura, Cultura Moderna, Técnico-Artística. He's this gentleman, this architect, is one of the great, very interesting Spanish architect. I would say it's not one of the greatest, but almost one of the greatest in this transition between classical and modernism. And he wrote an extensive book saying how they were learning architecture everywhere else. Very interesting. He doesn't talk about modernist architecture as we are talking now. He recognized that there is a need of modernizing the teaching of architecture, but he's not talking neither about Bauhaus or about other stuff. He's talking about improving tradition from tradition, and this is very important. So all these books are available on the internet, so I recommend you to read them. And in general, this is a very, very interesting book. The Struggle for Modernism, Architecture Landscape Architecture, and City Planning at Harvard. This explains, this is mostly for the English audience. This is how the American Beaux Arts tradition was systematized, was converted into what it was, and why basically died out of success. I mean, for time reasons, I'm not going to deepen much into this book, but if there is interest, again, as I always say, just type in the chat or type in the WhatsApp group or write me privately in my email or in my WhatsApp that you want to know more about this book, and we will do it. So we're almost to the end. I'm trying to compress the lectures, as all of you asked me in the questionnaire. You asked me that you wanted the lecture to be around 1 hour. As an epilogue, we are going to see what happened after. One of the things that unfortunately we need to talk about was the unfortunate burning of the Vignolas in Santiago de Cuba in 1947 and Santiago de Chile in 1948. So this has been portrayed as enfant terrible thing, as guys who were tired of drafting the orders and that they create a revolution in the university, and then they basically banned all the vignolas, which were the book that the students had to use to learn to draw the order. So this is also telling you the importance of vignola. This is not the banning of the Palladios, this is not the banning of the Serlios, this is the banning of the vignolas. Why? Because they were the book that the students were using. In Santiago de Cuba, there were around 50 books, and all of them were banned. And the funny thing is that once you think about it, once you scratch into the surface, the people who organized these, the whole story is told as the students organizing spontaneously and doing a rebellion. The truth is that the students who did that were graduated students from Harvard who were disciples of Gropius, and they went there to create a mess. Because think that Cuba back then was into a dictatorship, Batista, and the students wouldn't dare to do that. So bear that in mind. The year after, very soon, Gropius arrived, and here it said the long-awaited visit of Gropius was influenced notably by this fact, of course, because it was done by his disciples. We don't know to which extent Gropius actually planned the whole thing, but he radical. What you can say is that he was like the intellectual author of the banning of the books, which is funny because we have a person who flew Nazi Germany because he had his ideas censored, and then was the first one in censoring ideas in Harvard, and then later on in Santiago de Cuba, and later on in Chile. And all the mess ended precisely when Gropius arrived, and surprise, he changed the program to make it look like Harvard, which is what the graduated students wanted to do. And even nowadays, I think obviously some of them are dead, but when they were questioned about it, they don't say that they were Gropius students. They always say that they were students from Santiago de Cuba, that they were admirers of Gropius. And then when you're just asking them, oh no, yeah, it's true, I'm old, I don't remember. So it's a bit of the backstory of how modernism took over in South America. But at the same time, we have, and we will talk about him later on, about Luis Moya, one of the greatest Spanish classicists. These are his drawings from this is from the Laboral de Gijón, so these are from the 1940s, 1950s. So again, this is the skills that people still had back then. This is the Laboral de Gijón. As you can see, I mean, it was designed as a city within the city, obviously with the preeminence of a church as a central building, but the whole thing was a free interpretation of classical antiquity in a completely novel way. Very, very interesting. Lovely building, which also has, despite me talking about Vignola, has the best Palladian Corinthian atrium in history, is there in the Laboral de Gijón. And now people who died recently, Fernando Chueca Goitia, I saw him lecturing at the University of Sevilla. He finished the Cathedral of Madrid. So these are the people who survived modernism and almost came here to tell us. This is the Cathedral of Madrid. You see this cathedral. You might think that it's neoclassical. No, it was finished in the 1990s. The inside is neo-Gothic, but all the outside was finished in the 1990s. Of course, we cannot speak without one of the biggest traditional Spanish architects of all times, Rafael Manzano Martos, Dream House Prize in 2010, born in 1932. One reference, he was my professor at university and professor of many people in Spain. He was a great restorer. We will talk about him when we talk about Masters of Restoration. And he did buildings like this. This is from 1956, the custom office in Cadiz. So we are not talking about all neoclassical buildings. We're talking about contemporary buildings. So this is what you need to bear in mind, that is possible, and here they are as an example. Enrique Nuere is a wonderful architect born in 1938. This architect, Enrique Nuere, Mr. Nuere has revitalized the tradition of Mudéjar coffer ceilings in a time in which no one's, the treatise that we were talking before about López de Arenas, people thought this it's very complicated to read. People were saying it has no sense, it's impossible to know how to do it, until Mr. Nuere said, no, you just need to sit down and read it. And he sat down, he read it, and he managed to understand it so well that he even created, apparently, obviously it's his business secret, he claims that he has a program in which he uses to design all these things. It's not just drawing individual elements in CAD, it's just a program where he put the parameters and then the ceiling is generated. This other one, Fernando Higueras, is a contemporary architect, is still alive. And this is as well to see how modernism didn't abolish beautiful drawings. You can be a modernist architect and still do beautiful drawings. And I'm bringing it just especially for those who think that just pretty drawings just will solve the problem. No, pretty drawings cannot solve the problem. This is a modernist building, very pretty, but still a modernist building. If you want to defend tradition, the design is what matters, not only the graphics. And part of that, I mean, the students still, almost until very recently, at least in Sevilla, had to learn how to draw by hand, how to draw traditional techniques by hand, sometimes combining with computer assisted drawings with CAD. And this is a folder of drawings done in the 90s by students of the University of Sevilla. And nowadays, we have the Fundación de Culturas Constructivas Tradicionales and the Red de Maestros de la Construcción Tradicional in Spain, who are taking the legacy and we're continuing this legacy. And I wanted to bring them because they are a very important part of the movement. They did a wonderful summer school this year in Ronda. I don't know if any of you attended. I hope that some of you here attended, but if not, I recommend strongly to go to the next in Iberia Summer School, which I also contributed to found in 2012. So for me, even if I am not heavily involved anymore, because I live in UK, I always follow them closely and I keep them close to my heart. And this is the whole architectural education of Spain during this period in a nutshell. And before we finish, if you know that I am the director of studies of the Classic Planning Academy, and we are doing a GR1 certificate program, traditional architectural and planning, and we invite you to come. I mean, I think that today we have some of our former students who can talk if they want. If not, it's not an obligation. I'm not going to say who they are. So if they want, yes. If not, it's okay. But This is my email for those of you who don't know. I strongly recommend you to apply because it's the best place for you to learn classical architecture online without having to move from your home, without having to go to study abroad or far from your home, or if you're a professional and have kids and have a job and cannot commit to studying 24/7. Our courses are at a great price, and they come quite intense with a lot of information, and they are taught online, so you will see from a webcam like this how to draw the order. These are actually, let's say, working drawings. This is what what the students see when they are drawing. And as I always say, follow your local chapter of INBA or subscribe to our Classic Planning Institute for more information. This is some of our students' work from previous years. Some of them knew how to use a pencil, others didn't, and they learned very quickly. Some of them challenged themselves quite a lot in creating beautiful drawings. And I cannot recommend you more to ask us, as me or as my colleague Nirburas, the author of The Art of Classic Planning. If you want to know more about our courses, please come and ask. And I will put it in the chat group and in all the social media. We will have an open exhibition and jury on the 25th of September 2025, where all the students from this year will expose their work and they will tell us about it. So I am looking very much forward to the day. We have a selected jury, which we will publish. You will see in the invitation that will appear in the groups within the next days. And here I'm inviting all of you to come to the jury because it's going to be an open session. It will also be recorded, but it won't be published in this channel. It will be published in the Classic Planning Institute channel. And we have come to the end of the lecture. And I am wondering if any of you have any question or something to debate or to say. What is the website? Pietra, excuse me, I think that you sent a message like 40 minutes ago, which
I found it.
you found, but yeah, you were looking for the academy, no?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the website of the Royal Academy. We have another message here, no? So, any questions, any comments about traditional architecture in Spain? Or yes? You also know, for those of you who are new, that we also do critique. So if you have a project that you want to review, you can bring it here and we will review it for free for you. Normally, I recommend design projects, not projects which might be bounded by an NDA, etc. If you have projects of that type and want a critique, you shouldn't because you are bounded by an NDA. But if not, I'm happy to help with anything you may need.
I have a question.
Yes.
Are we going to delve into the Neoplatonesco style at some point?
Not at the moment, but we could. If there is interest, I could do a lecture on Neoplatonesco. We might enter a little bit into it in the next season when we do the Mudéjar revivals. The Mudéjar revival is inevitably linked to Neoplatonesco. But if there is any interest on the Neoplatonesco, we'll probably talk about it during the precursors of traditional of modern traditional architecture. We will talk a little bit about that probably in the next session. So probably in the next one, in the last generation of classicists, we will talk a little bit with architects like, for example, Aníbal González and many others of the time.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. And this is the calendar, the preliminary calendar that I have for there. We discussed it at the beginning, but I wanted to put it here again just so that you can take a better, more comfortable look at it and see if there is anything. I mean, I do it as an open session. Obviously, the people watching the recording will also hopefully come back and say something. But as this colleague has already said, is there anything that you would like to talk about, excluding the 11th of October and the 15th of November, which are more fixed topics? All the rest are free and are open also to, I am open to your suggestions if you have anything that you would like to be talked or lectured here. Or any comments about the organization that you don't understand or how it goes.
Pablo,
Yes.
can you explain a little bit more about the classical planning that you're talking about?
Yes.
How it works?
So you mean the Classic Planning Institute, our courses?
Yes.
So basically, our courses are taught online. This is basically what you will see when you are learning. You connect from your house. You will need to have obviously drafting material, and we will explain you how to draw the orders step by step. There are classes. Our classes start on Thursdays at 5 o'clock and last 5 o'clock British time, and last for 5 hours. And in that 5 hours, you are able to draw something like what you see here in the left, a full page with the Corinthian order that then you will use in 2 exercises to draw first a gate and then a pavilion. And then for the third exercise, you will design an urban complex on an area of your life, an area that you want, based on the principle of classic planning. And the principle of classic planning are the principles behind how we did cities, how cities were designed, how cities were built before they started to be disrupted by heavy traffic and urban degradation, and of course modernism. That's the course in a nutshell.
The classes is every Friday.
Thursday.
Thursday. Okay.
We start on the 13th of November, and we are still accepting students. So if you want to know more, you can send me an email here or send your application to the address that you see down here.
Okay, thank you.
So you're very welcome, and then you send your application and you see. Yes, Miguel?
Yes, Pablo. So first off, thank you for that presentation. That was very nice. My question is, do you think for this upcoming year, because I know you guys will start another year one soon.
Yes.
Do you think there will be enough students to kickstart a year two next year in 2026?
Well, probably by 2026 we should.
Okay.
By autumn 2026, because normally what we do for the year two, obviously, we need to ensure that the students have a knowledge of the orders and classical architecture and classic planning. So the best way to ensure that is obviously if they do our year one. Now, for those of you who haven't done our year one, that might be, it's not a shortcut, because it's not a short, there is never a shortcut. But if the student can demonstrate that they have enough knowledge on traditional architecture and classic planning, and they have to demonstrate by a portfolio, we can admit them. And how do you demonstrate that? Obviously, you will need to do a similar course to ours. So being a Notre Dame student will be a good prerequisite, or Benedictine College, or ACBA, or any of Trondheim. And then you will need to also demonstrate that you have a knowledge on urbanism, and there are several summer schools, several programs that they do that. So any program from Create Streets or from Let's Build a Beautiful City, that they will qualify you to our year two. I know some of you may come from the Aesthetic City. The Aesthetic City Academy also is a link to enter into our year one. So anyone who has done the certificate for the year one, for the Aesthetic City Academy, can come to us for our year one, because we know that they are ready and fully prepared for the course. Those who might haven't done it, don't worry. You will have plenty of myself and Dr. Buras during those classes to ensure that you have all the knowledge that we can provide you within the time frame that we have. And GR2, just to close the question, GR2 is more focused on design itself, and it's more focused on the study of historical precedents. So in GR2 is when actually as you can see, in the other programs that were historical programs of architectural education, they didn't learn history until they learned the language of classical architecture. Why? Because then you appreciate history better. So that way, in year 2, we use a lot of precedents. We use a lot of mostly classical antiquity, a good portion of Gothic, and a big portion of early modern, classical, Renaissance, Baroque, neoclassicism, but without forgetting the 20th century, and also without forgetting other architectural aesthetics or representations, Asian, African, and American. So that would be our year 2, and obviously the exercises will be bigger. There will be less exercises, and they will be more ambitious than the one that we have done in year 1.
Thank you, Pablo.
You're very welcome. Any more questions, comments on the order? I'm going to explain. If you have a question while I'm talking, just type in the chat or raise your hand. The way we're going to work with Modernismus by Reginald Blomfield. I'm going to give you in the WhatsApp group. If you are not in our WhatsApp group, just send me a message and I will send you the link. And in that link, you will have the PDF of this book by Reginald Blomfield. It's a very rare book. It's not on sale. It's impossible to find. And I just scanned a copy at the library at the Victorian Albert Museum, and I'm going to make it available for everyone. The idea is that we will try to read as much as possible of the book by the 25th of October. It's a very short book, so don't worry about it. It's very short. And on the 25th, what we will do, I will do a general summary of the book, telling the key points, the most important things of the book, especially for those who haven't read it. And then we will have an open chat about what Blomfield said in that book. I think it's a very important book for everyone to read and to understand and to learn about how classical architecture, traditional architecture fought in modernism, and which arguments we can use. So there are very good contemporary books about tradition, but they are done after modernism smash tradition. So there are books that are trying to find a new way, trying to reconstruct. These books were still fighting from the strength of a life tradition. I think it's very important to know that, because I think it's an encouragement to know that there were people like Reginald Blomfield who in the 1930s were fighting modernism with his own work. And if you have never heard about Reginald Blomfield, if you're having in London and having in Piccadilly Circus, all the buildings around Piccadilly Circus were done by Reginald Blomfield. So now if you don't know, you can go to Google Earth, check those buildings. That's what Reginald Blomfield was doing, amongst many other really interesting things. So I think he was a figure that has been very unfairly forgotten. And he was a good writer. He wrote about plenty of topics. And it's very good to know about him. So that's what we will do with Modernismus. But that would, as I know that a lot of you have been loving the idea of me recommending books, I will keep recommending books every week. And if there are books that people or articles that you would like to comment or to read, I am happy to include them and to be changing the program to include all of them. And but again, as I was saying in the other group, they have to be of actual interest for architects and for architecture and for the purpose of tradition. The other day in a group discussion, they were commenting books that were coming from very dodgy sources. They were tangentially talking about architecture, entering into conspiracy theories, etc. And this is not the place to talk about them. So feel free to suggest articles, but they have to be articles that matter. For example, there is a very good but dangerous article called "The Mathematics of the Ideal Villa," in which Colin Rowe comments the relationship, the geometry of the Palladian villas, the geometry of the Le Corbusierian villas, and because he has found some relationships between the villas of Le Corbusier and the villas of Palladio, which Le Corbusier doesn't talk about, by the way, he says that he comes to more or less the conclusion that why study Palladio when you have Le Corbusier? So it's very interesting to read the whole article, because it's a very quoted article when they tell you, oh, you like Palladio, read this. So it's very good that you know what the article actually says. So there is a lot of elements of modernism that are to be known, but it's more interesting to read all that than deep into bad readings of opportunistic people. And I'm not going to say names. You know all of them, who they are. So be careful with all those articles and books from all times that they usually don't come from architects. They don't come from even from people related to architecture. They come from politicians. Be careful with them. I would say don't waste your time reading them. Use your time in reading interesting books. Use your time reading Leon Krier. Use your time reading Nir Buras. Use your time reading Dimitri Porphyrios. Use your time reading Alireza Zagarchi. Use your time reading Robert Adam, but not on those other people. All of them are much more interesting than any of those politicians entered into architects. You are not in the group. Okay, I'm going to share the link to enter into the group so that you have it. Just 1 second, please. If you enter into our YouTube channel, you will also find the link to the group, but I'm going to share it in a moment. Community, invite members. Okay, and then 1 second, please. Okay. Here you have it in the chat. Please join. It's open to everyone. And for those of you who are watching through the recording, you have the link in the group description. And you will see that that the group has several sections. The main one is the announcements, in which is just announcement that we made about when is the next salon going to be, or the special sessions. And then we have several groups. We have off topic for general discussions. We have inspiration for pictures that you might find inspiring. And we have projects for you to share projects and many others. So this is our WhatsApp group, but we have other initiatives that they are being worked on, and we're moving towards more interesting ways of enhancing our community and having a space for proper discussion, not just a WhatsApp group where all the discussions get lost. And I don't know if I mean, we have a person here who is working on this. I don't know if you want to talk about it, or if you want, we can. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, we have Michael Hadida, who is an architect based in Portugal, and he's going to talk us about a very, very interesting initiative that he's working on. So the scene is yours, Michael.
Thank you, Pablo. Very fascinating to hear about the tradition of architectural education, especially compared with the modernist education that I and so many of you have had yourselves. I don't know. How many of you are students in university right now?
We have
Okay.
Pia, and who else? You can raise your hand. You can say yes in the group.
Or in the chat.
Yeah, in the chat.
So
Yeah.
very, very cool. So I also attended a modernist education, and I attended Carnegie Mellon in the US. I'm American originally, now living in Portugal. Uh, but basically, I stepped away from the profession after I found it to be completely um, untenable. It was a miserable profession. And I came back to it eventually through craft, through actually making architecture with my hands, laying brick and carpentry and roofing and plumbing and electrical. And so I have been learning a lot, partially through the Salon of Classical Architecture, through CPI, through INTBAL, many of the organizations that you all are a part of. And I have been engaging in a very interesting project. Pablo, may I share my screen?
Yes, of course. You should be
Thank you.
able to do it.
So the project that we've been working on is a technical project. It's an internet infrastructure, let's call it, to organize all of the information within our movement globally. So if we are, let's call it in a big umbrella sense, the movement towards beautiful buildings and more livable cities, better urbanism, the new Agora, which is our name, at www.agora.new, is the place to organize all this information. It is a live site. We are still doing alpha testing, so we're not quite ready to take signups yet, but we are doing a soft launch in October at the INTBOW World Congress, actually. So if any of you will be attending the INTBOW World Congress in London, we'll see you there. And if you will not be attending or you're unable to make it, we will also be hosting the live stream on the new Agora, which I believe as a student you can purchase for £10 or as a professional for £15 English. So very quickly, I won't spend too much more of your time tonight, but we have essentially 7 categories: news, events, jobs, a marketplace, competitions, education, a directory, and forums. So in the news section, for example, we're populating all the latest news from many different sources around the world, in several different languages as well. We will have the ability to upvote and downvote articles for relevance, or to sort by the latest versus the most popular, and also change how we see. Then if you click it, it basically will take you to the original host article. You can also submit your own news articles, and pending moderation, you will receive credit. Your name will appear at the bottom of the article you submitted. Events. So this is for all the events, virtual and physical, worldwide in the Beauty for Architecture movement. For example, we were talking about INTBOW. And if you click it, it'll take you to the INTBOW Eventbrite page, where you can purchase tickets for either attending in person, or if you scroll down all the way, to purchase the live stream. Then we have jobs. So we're still building this out, but this will be a jobs board for architects, for contractors, for stonemasons, for roofers, for urbanists, anybody and everybody to post jobs, and for students and professionals to find job opportunities as well. The marketplace is one of my personal favorite features. Currently, we have some books that are hosted by Amazon, so we're hoping to build a little library that you can purchase from either Amazon or bookshop.org. But we also have the ability to sell your own products. So we have 5 kinds of products. One of them is digital products. So we're hoping to basically host the digital pattern book, so that instead of having to constantly redraw a Corinthian column each individual time, you can either upload your own and sell it to other people in the movement, or you can spend, I don't know, imagine 20 euros, let's say, and buy somebody else's Corinthian column to implement in your design. We have affiliate links. That's like the Amazon products I just showed you. Print on demand. I'm super excited about this one. You'll be able to sell your art prints, watercolors, photography. You'll be able to sell your thesis, your master's thesis, let's say, as a book. You can self-publish it, and other people around the world can buy it, and it's printed on demand. There's no warehousing. It's shipped from the nearest place. As well as one-on-one coaching. So for example, if you wanted to book a one-on-one session with Pablo, you can name his price hourly, and then he's kind enough usually to generously offer his advice for free. But perhaps you'd like to share your expertise with somebody for an hourly fee. You can do it that way. And finally, one-off project commissions, where you can hire somebody to paint your dog as Napoleon or carve a custom pilaster or something. Competitions, we're also hosting competitions. So, well, we are the platform that you can use to host competitions, I should say. So for example, if, well, I'm not logged in at the moment, but if you wanted to host a competition for a building in your city, you could do it that way. We're also allowing people to, forgive, it is an alpha test stage right now, so not everything is working perfectly. But you'll also be able to form teams and submit your designs for competitions as well. Then we have a educational section where you will potentially apply for summer schools through this platform, as well as accessing things like the Aesthetic City Academy, the Classical Planning Academy, as Pablo mentioned. The course is beginning soon. We'll also have information about Notre Dame, crafts, workshops, et cetera, et cetera. The directory will be a place where you can find other professionals and students and organizations and companies from all walks of life, whether it's plumbers, lawyers, real estate agents, urbanists, lighting designers, landscape architects. They'll all be here as long as they're interested or working on classical or traditional architecture or vernacular in some capacity. So we already have, I think currently 1,500 firms here, which will soon expand to 1,700 as soon as I update the database. You might notice that there's a claim button. So if you are an associate or working with one of these firms, organizations, you can take control of that organization. And for example, Pablo had mentioned Adam Architects at one point, so I will find them. So Adam Architecture, here we go. You can visit their website. We'll have the social media accounts as well as the ability to upload your portfolio that you can then use as a user to apply for jobs or to apply for educational opportunities. Last but not least, we have community forums. Pablo, can I disclose your role in the forums?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Thank you. So Pablo has generously agreed to help us since he has plenty of experience moderating the Salon for classical architecture. On top of being just one of the foremost encyclopedic knowledge encyclopedias on the subject. He has generously offered to moderate and help us design the forums. So we'll have sections for design critiques, for building and crafts, materials. We're going to have a section, of course, the off topic is always popular, a place to have critiques for your projects, et cetera, et cetera. Cool. So that's basically what myself and my business partner, Thomas Fleming of Inbound Norway, have been working on for the past, let's say a little bit over a year now, but in its current form, the last 3 months, really. We now have a team of 3, potentially up to a team of 5 soon. If anybody wants to get involved in some way, please do reach out. If you have any questions about the platform or ideas, I'm happy to take a few questions now, or I'm always available if you want to message me privately. Okay, thank you for your time.
Oh, Michael, it's amazing.
Hi, Pietro. Thank you.
Very good, because it's kind of difficult to find information about traditional architecture when you don't know where to reach this thing. Then here we have everything. Amazing idea.
Thank you. Thank you. And please feel free to reach out to me if you want to be an early tester, if you have any ideas, suggestions. We're very much open to taking ideas. We can't implement them all at once, right? It's going to be a process of opening new features one by one. But we're moving fast.
Okay.
Thank you, Pietro.
I think Miguel has a question.
Yes,
Miguel?
Michael, I also had a comment on a question, but this is fantastic. I think it's very, very much needed, like Pietra was saying. Especially because sometimes I've invited some friends actually from architecture school. We studied architecture in Mexico, and they also wonder, where to find resources, where to find, people that are doing this in real time, in real life. So this is an excellent resource, and I can also, share with others. So, we thank you collectively for taking the
Thank you.
initiative to do all this. My question is there, and maybe you already mentioned this, but it passed me over. Is there a specific organization that already existed that is doing this, that took the initiative, like INBAO, like ICAA, or is this something
Okay.
that you are doing independently with other members? Like how did it start, or how did the conversation begin to do this,
100%. So we're very much independent. I think that that's very important to be a bit, let's say, agnostic relative to all the other organizations in our movement, which there are many. There are many, many organizations. So in order to, let's say, not play favorites or to be sometimes you can run into political differences or ideological differences. So we're remaining fully independent, big tent, large umbrella, and our goal is ultimately to reseed so that all the other organizations can promote themselves. How the project started was last summer. I was essentially looking for a job in traditional architecture after moving to Europe, and I couldn't find one. There was no resource to look as far as I could tell. And so I began to build a jobs board that was in July of 2024. I had a few great conversations with Dr. Nir Burris of CPI, Pablo. I had some conversations with people of INTBAL, as well as the Beauty and Ugliness, which is now the Nordic Symposium for Beauty in Oslo. And through these conversations, the platform grew. The next thing after jobs was events because I was tired of missing summer school deadlines. And beyond that, it grew organically to have the rest of the features. Does that answer your question?
No, yes, you absolutely did. Thank you. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Miguel. Maybe I have time for one more question before I hop on another call.
Any more questions to Michael? I mean, I think it's great what he's doing. I'm looking forward to see more, and yeah, I mean, you will see more of it, and definitely, I mean, he's doing the great work of broadcasting the Inbound Congress, and those of you who cannot attend, you will be able to see us in there.
On the live stream, absolutely. For only £10 if you're a student. And it's a we now. Let's be clear, it's not just me. It's we're a big team. A big small team. So thank you, Pablo. I actually have a cake in the oven and another call to make. So
Perfect. Well, thank you for being here, Michael, and thank you for talking to us.
Thank you, everyone.
The wonderful new Agora.
Thank you so much. All right, thanks everybody, and feel free to reach out to me with any questions. Pablo, would you mind putting, you know what? I'll put my email in your WhatsApp, and then you can spread that around.
Let's do that, and then I will share it.
Actually, I'm just gonna put it in the chat right now.
Yeah, put it in the chat, and then I will put it in the WhatsApp group. At least the people who are here, they will be able to contact you.
Perfect. All right, thank you, everybody. Have a great evening.
Thank you. You too, Michael. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Pablo. Ciao for now.
Ciao, ciao. Well,
Pablo, I have one last question.
Yeah, as much as you want.
It's about the Congress.
Yes.
The conference online that he was talking about.
Yes.
It's for all the 4 days?
It's 3 days.
3 days, yes.
Yeah. It's 3 days of events, yes.
Okay. Is one ticket for the 3 days?
I think it's one ticket for the, yeah, correct. It's one ticket for the 3 days.
Okay.
And then, I mean, I think that at the moment, the tickets that you can buy through Eventbrite, they are for the live access, not the in-person, so you will need to come to London to access them, and then eventually Michael will publish the link for the broadcasted version.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
That's basically what we will do. Anyway, any more questions or comments about the program, what you would like to see up until the 6th of December? Anything else about the traditional architecture? Would you like to know about other countries, the banning of the Vignola, who was Walter Gropius?
You're talking about the American Viola.
Yes.
It was not so easy to understand for someone who doesn't know the basics. What is a good book to learn the basics?
Vignola. The Canon of the 5 Orders of Vignola is one of the best ones. together. I mean, any edition. I mean, there are several new editions that will be good. There are a couple of editions in Portuguese that work quite well. Vignola dos Propietarios, I think it's the name. It's a French, it's a Portuguese translation of a French edition that works quite well. And if you go to archive.org and click Vignola and then limit the language to Portuguese, you get all the editions that were published in Portuguese. All the three of them that are in Portuguese in that website, they're very good. And I recommend you them to start with that. The American Vignola is a good book. It's the one that is available for in most of the cases, and it's the default book that has the book by default in traditional architectural education through the ICIA and the University of Notre Dame. That's the book that we also use at the Classic Planning Institute for our students. So it's a very good book, don't get me wrong. But you might find, if you study it on your own, that there are things that are not explained in the book. And that is because the author, William Ware, just assumed that you knew it. That's what he wanted to say about the book itself. Yeah. Oh, hello, Christian. Very good to see you here. The ICIA, but the ICIA Premier, as you very well say, it's under copyright and giving in their workshops. So it's a book that you need to do the course to do it. So that's the problem. But it's a very good book. But it's very well protected, and the ICIA doesn't want people who don't do their courses to do it. So if you find it, do it at your own risk, or if you want to ask someone for it. It's a very good one. I have seen it. It's very good, but it's protected by the ICIA and cannot be distributed. So that's the only problem. Oh, sorry, my dear, you were saying something.
Oh, you could write the names, the books that you said in the chat for me.
So it's the American Vignola, the canon of the American Vignola by William Ware, and the other one is canon of the 5 orders by Giacomo Barozio de Vignola. I think in Portuguese you can find this as Vignola, like the way you pronounce Vignola, the N in Portuguese. Yes,
Thank you.
I want to barge in here a little bit. Pietra, I don't know, have you studied or had any classical or traditional architecture education on drawing or any of the sorts?
In my university, no.
Mm-hmm.
But this year I attend to the Iberian summer school.
Okay.
And was my first contact with this.
Okay. The reason I ask is because if Pablo, sorry for interrupting you.
No. You are very free to interrupt as much
there's a book that I like to recommend a lot as well for people that are barely starting to get into this. For geometry. It's called Drawing Geometry by John Allen, and it gives you like a very like a base, like a fundamental starting point for like just learning how to draw a circle, learning how to draw a triangle, learning how to draw a square. It seems simple, like baby steps, but it really helps you in the long run if you they're interested to, and anybody for here, if you guys are interested in starting with geometry, I think it's a good starting point.
Can you write
Yeah,
it down?
I'll write it down.
Yes. Geometry is very important. I mean, as you have seen in all these programs, that all the students have to learn a lot of geometry. So this is not only about drawing, it's drawing properly. And geometry is a very important and fundamental part of classical architecture. So you need to know very well. I mean, actually, in our course on the Classic Planning Institute, there is a full 5-hour class devoted only to geometry, moldings, lettering, so that you get all the bases that you need. And actually, today I have been told by a former student who is in a traditional architectural workshop that he was explaining the students about all the geometry that we learned that he learned at the academy, and everyone was finding it very useful. So the word spreads.
Thank you, Miguel.
You are very welcome. So I think that we are about to finish it. I mean, thank you all of you for all your comments, your questions, for coming here. Our next session will be on the, when was it? On the 27th of September. But we will have another previous one on the 25th, which with the general exhibition of all our projects by the students and the jury. I strongly recommend all of you and everyone who is listening to come to that presentation. If you want the date and if you want the link, please contact us. It will be shared in the WhatsApp group and other groups, so that it's an open invitation, so that you can RSVP and tell us if you are attending or not. You won't regret. You will enjoy the wonderful works that all our students have been doing in the past year. I have been with the whip, ensuring that they were doing it, but it's that they are very wonderful students. I have done a very, very wonderful work, and they are very proud of it, and I'm very proud of them. And if
Thank you,
want to
Pablo.
come-
That
yes,
was super nice.
thanks
Thanks a lot.
Very good to see you here. Thank you.
Well, was super interesting. Thank you very much.
One day I should do the one about the architecture of the Beaux-Arts in France, but it's not good enough there. So, but it's very interesting. What was being done in France was because was the model for everyone. The Spanish architectural education is obviously with the Bourbons is inspired directly in France. So, but
yeah, it will be fantastic.
France having more resources was more very, very, very interesting what you guys were doing there in the up until 1968. So very interesting as well. Perfect.
Thank you.
The recording is gonna be online because I came pretty late.
Yes, I will, as soon as we finish and the recording is uploaded, I will upload it to the YouTube channel, and you should be able to watch it, and everyone who couldn't attend, and it will be there for the time being. So, well, thank you very much.
Thanks for everything.
Thank you. I'm very happy to see you here, Christian, that you made your time to do it, that they're giving you time to come here. I'm very happy to see you back.
It's a football game today, so everything is closed. That is not football.
Okay. That's the reason why. But anyway, if you cannot come later on in other sessions, you will be able to see the to see us through the recordings. And yeah, I mean, I'm wishing you the best. I'm sure that you are making the best of your time, and that I'm very happy with. I mean, I guess that you're obviously happier than me, but I'm very happy to see that you're taking the steps that you're taking. So if you want to tell more to the audience, happy. If not, I leave.
No, it's just that I will just say that your name is actually really well known. A lot of professors know about you. So
I'm happy to see that. Well, thank you. But
it has been till now. It's only has been about a month. So, but it has been worth the sacrifice in every sense. I'm not with my family here, so it's
important. I guess that helps. But yeah, I mean,
it's a great institution. It's nothing is perfect, obviously, but it's the greatest educational experience that I have till now, I think.
I'm very happy to hear that, and I'm very happy that you're taking the best of the opportunity. I guess that when you go to Italy, it will be even better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much of you for coming here.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I will see you in the group. I will see you when I see you. Some of you, I will see you in London. If not, we will see you virtually or next week. Thank you very much, and see you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
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 Bye.